So I just want to share this little quick story. So before I even knew what return to sender was, because that's like I said, I've been innocent in this world, not knowing, like just disconnected from the spiritual, right? So the one time when I shared with you guys, I did a water affirmation a few years back, and I just poured out water. I was under the moon, talking, like just calling out for my ancestors, and they appeared to me in a dream, right? So in this dream, there was some type of entity following me. And this is what led me to know and understand that grocery stores are also portals. It's like an interdimensional portal, the grocery store. And I probably make another video just further explaining that one later. But I was in a grocery store, and this entity was following me and one of my other relatives that was already there. They were in that realm or whatever, but I came there to help her with something because she was scared to go home, or because she was being followed. So she just kept circling around and just kept coming back, but this entity kept following us. So finally she was like, no, the entity was following me. I'm sorry, the entity followed me, and it followed me into that dimension or that realm where my ancestors were. And so, but it couldn't hurt me, but it was trying to intimidate me. And it was kind of intimidating because I'm just like, for one, I don't like to be stared at for too long because, you can't see what you could see like in a glance or just whatever. Like, what are you looking at? and then kind of like, even since a kid, I felt like people could see into my soul. It was like, why are you staring at me? Because maybe that's the way I could see into people too. So I don't really know. But I thought it was my cousin at the time. And this is when I found out that it was really my grandma that had already passed or whatever. But when I seen her in this dream state, she was like about younger than me. I explained like she had on like these pearls, this nice little jazzy like dress or whatever. And I thought it was a cousin because I didn't think because what I was like, my understanding like of death, like you just would be as you were. But I was explaining too, like my grandma taught me a lot about energy and how it transforms and things like that. Like she taught me a lot about energy from behind the veil, right? More than I've ever learned in this life. They've taught me so much, like in my dreams, through visions and things like that. So my grandma, she was telling me like it's okay that it was like a cabin or something that our family had in the woods. It was like only for like our bloodline or something. So she took us and we like circled the block a couple of times and we went into the woods, and I was telling her like I can still feel that entity. Like I couldn't see it, but I can just feel its presence. It was like it was still following me. And then she was just telling me like it's okay. So we went to the cabin in the woods, and then there I'm seeing like my great granddad, my great grandma, and then their kids. They were sitting at the table. It was like 3 boys, 3 men or whatever. And that's why, I just went to dove just to see who it was or whatever. But the way they were dressed, they were all dressed from like different periods of time. Like my grandma had on this jazzy dress. My great grandma was dressed like, I don't even know like where they wear like the hats with the feathers in it. And she had like on a nice little pea coat. And then my granddad, he had on some suspenders and a wife beater, suspenders, I think. I just remember the suspenders because that's what caught my attention. Like, you wearing overalls, bro? But yeah, that's what he had on. He like remind me like of a farmer. That's what he was kind of dressed like a farmer. And then his sons that was sitting at the table, they all had on white blouses with like these black pants, but the pants was cut like at the knees, like right under the knees, and their shirts was all holey and beaten up and stuff like that. And that's kind of like the environment I walked into. So I'm just like looking around, scaling the room. And then my grandma told me, go ahead and sit down. So I'm like, okay, cool. Boom. My granddad, he's like, he told his son, he's like, hand me that letter off the table. Then he read me this letter. It was telling me like he wished that he could have met me and got to know me, that he had dreams and stuff about me. But he's like, he wrote this letter out that, to get to me when I was ready to receive it. Or whatever, but they were just telling me like thank you, like thanking me for finding them or whatever, because I had to be lost and just go deep into myself, like world betrayals, friend betrayals, like all this other crazy stuff, to where I felt completely alone, to where I had no choice but to just love on myself and just consume within myself. And that's what I did, just went inside myself, and then I found them when I went inside of me. So so anyway, so the entity, my granddad, I was like kind of looking nervous. He's reading his letter. He's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, and they were like, he was older. He was like an older man. And I was telling him, like, this entity was following us, and it followed us from the grocery store, and it followed us around. And he was like, oh, he's still out there? And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, low-key, I'm scared or whatever. And he was like, he went out there, and I was like, it just like remind me of a cartoon right here. It was like, kabow, kabow. And it was just like literally like that. It was like, bow, bow, kabow, pow, pow, pow. Like all those little punching noises. But he went outside and beat the entity up, and he was like, you don't ever have to worry about, that thing following you again or whatever. And so I was like, okay, cool. And then so after he read me this letter, and then I just remembered, when he got to the bottom part of the letter, he was like telling me about my family, and he was just like thanking me for not, doing the things that they were doing or just being like them. And he was just like, he knew that I would find him. Like he had like dreams and stuff about me before, like all this other stuff. But anyways, but he was just telling me, like, the end of his letter, he started crying. And he was just like, no matter what path you take in life, just remember that family is the most important thing. And that's one thing that they didn't, cherish really when they were alive, was their family or whatever. And I ain't trying to get into all that, but he was just like, just remember, family is the most important thing. So I'm just like, okay, noted. So then he was like, told me I was safe, I didn't have to worry about nothing, go out and have fun, like go exploring, like where I was at. So I was like, cool. So it was me and my grandma again, and we were on this road. And it's so crazy to me because this road that we were on, it's like a road that I've seen in my childhood that I was really on. Me and my sister was on this road in my waking life. But in this dream, it was me and my grandma. So in my waking life, I was like, I can't even remember how old I was. I know I was young. We had to have been around like 7, 8, 9, like around that age. One of my aunts and my cousins on my dad's side of the family, they were supposed to be babysitting us. And so they ended up sneaking out the house, and they took us, me and my sister, with them. So we're getting ready to cross this road, and it was either some coyotes or some werewolves. True story, true story, true story. My aunt and my cousin told me and my sister to stay right there, don't move, as these animals is coming towards us. And they ran across the street and jumped the fence. And it's late at night, and me and my sister are standing there crying, scared, because here comes these animals, and y'all told us not to move, and y'all left us. And then so me and my sister, we just looked at each other like, live or die. We ain't just gonna stand here and get eaten alive. So we did the same thing they did. So we started running in traffic. Cars started honking, and and then this lady stopped, and she told us to get in the car with her. Or whatever, like, what's wrong? Like, why are y'all out here by yourself? Like, where are your parents at? And I was like, my aunt and my cousin, they left us. They told us to stand right there. And she was like, what? I said, yeah, they told us to stand right there, and they ran this way. And we were pointing like they ran that way and whatever. And then when my aunt and them, they seen that the lady stopped, and she was going to take us, I don't know, to the police station. I don't know. But she had told us to get in the car. Like, she was going to try to find out where our parents and stuff was at. And that's when my aunt and cousin came back, and she was like, no, they with us, they're with us. The lady cussed them out, like, how could y'all leave them right there, like this, that, and the other, like pretty much telling them they was bogus. And then so they was mad at us for telling the truth because they got cussed out for it, which rightfully so. But that's what happened in my waking life. So in this dream, me and my grandma's getting ready to cross this street, and there is like, it wasn't coyotes, but this time it was like raccoons. And it was like over 100 raccoons, and I kid you not. And they were just running towards me and my grandma, and I was scared. And I'm like, my grandma told me not to move or whatever, because I'm like, we can go this way to try to avoid them, because it was still some time before they got to us. And my grandma was like, no, don't move. She's like, they're not going to touch you. And then as scary as it was, I stood there because I believed her. And I'm just like, okay. And the raccoons got so close, so close, so close. And they was running. They was like foaming at the mouths and everything. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, this is where, like, I'm about to meet my end. Da, 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 da. But as they was crossing that street, coming at me, this man, which, was my granddad, he was on the same side of the street, but it was across the street. It's like a 4-way crossing, and then like the busy road or whatever. So he was on this side, and he just appeared. He walked up under a tree. And then when he walked up under the tree, he was a wolf. And he ain't say nothing, he ain't howl or nothing. It was like his presence, the raccoons sensed it, and then they started like jumping over themselves, like running, hightailing back, but they got like this close to me. And I was standing there afraid, shaking in my knees. And I'm just like, this is deja vu of when my aunts told us not to move. And I'm like, this is just a setup. And I'm like, thinking in my head, like, this may be something's trying to play out and, da 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 da. But my granddad, he was just this wolf, this lone wolf by himself on the sidewalk. And he was like, just his presence alone, he was just standing there. And all he did was this, and he put his chest out. And those raccoons, took off running, and they ran the other way. They was jumping over themselves, biting each other on the leg and the back, on the back of the neck, all this other weird stuff to get away from me. Now they ran back to the direction where they came from. And my grandma was like, I told you, don't move, you're okay. And then the wolf came, because I didn't know it was my granddad at the time. So when the wolf came and he's still like under the moonlight, and then that's when I seen him, and I'm like, that's a wolf? I was like, da, da, da. Then my grandma just kind of smiled at me, and then as my granddad was walking closer, he formed back up into a man. And he stood there and he winked at me, and that's when he came across the street. He said, I told you, baby, you don't have to ever worry about anything that's trying to come and get you. You found us now, and we got you. Like, da 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 da. He's like, nothing. And this, that, and the other. And then, like, just me going through this last transformation that I was going through, like around November, December, like I didn't even share this with anybody. Like when I said like I had like 3 different ego deaths, it was crazy. Like I don't want to disclose, that's probably too TMI, but that was like me seeing the inner workings of return to sender. And they came and tried to get me. And then my granddad was like, I got him. And he chased those raccoons off. And my grandma was like my guide. And that's why I said, like, even like in life, she taught me all my say-sos. Like my grandma taught me like all like down to the core of what I know. And then she's still teaching me, even though she's passed on from this life. But I don't know what made me randomly think about that. But I did just want to share that. That's how I learned like what return to sender was through my ancestors and seeing it firsthand too.